Uh, Today's session, as we all know, and that is why a large number of participants have joined and are joining, is a very, very important topic, as we all know. There is no option other than being digital. We know it very well. Okay. In fact, if you know, today's address to the Parliament by the Honorable President of India, he had emphasized the importance of going digital as a part of when I outlined the government of India's vision and mission in his address. There was a specific focus on going for digital and how government is going to go all the way for digital. So when we have a topic like how do you go for digital transformation, there cannot be any other better topic than this. This transformation is taking place, but much more is required and much more learning is required because such a big field. And while there cannot be a better topic than this, there cannot be a better person to speak about that also. And I have a great pleasure and honor to introduce Professor Professor Dr. Srinivas Pinkley, who is our esteemed speaker for today. In fact, he is a known person. He has been nice enough to, as he just was saying, he was here at AMA physically about 1 year back also. So welcome, Professor Srinivas Pinkley, and a great pleasure in introducing him. Professor Srinivas Pinkley presently is a professor of practice at IIM Udaipur, okay, Indian Institute of Management Udaipur. Just before that, he was a part of the founding cohort of Executive Fellow Program in Management, what is known as EFPM, Doctor of Business Administration Equivalent Program at the very famous, very reputed Indian School of Business located at Hyderabad. Professor Srinivas is a chemical engineer from Osmania University and College of Technology and holds an MBA degree in marketing from University of Illinois at USA. His research interests are digital transformation, the topic of the today, as also small and medium enterprises and omni-channel strategy. He has over 28 years of experience in a diverse field, including product development, innovation, sales and marketing, market research and business operations in multinationals, including Tata Group and Accenture and entrepreneurial companies such as Coreto Global Services. I would say it's a fantastic mix of experience in different companies. Professor Srinivas is a regular speaker on platform-based services and SMEs, what we call small and medium enterprises strategies in the United States. He has published 2 case studies and also a book chapter on innovation and digital transformation. He recently authored a book, Made in India, a business process playbook for small and medium enterprises. Now, the title itself, I love the title, and I'm really looking forward to having this book and reading this book because, of course, in a very smaller way, I have been involved with MSMEs and SMEs such a long years and continue to be part of that domain regularly. So I'm sure I'm going to tell Mr. Nair I want to read this book, and I'm sure he will make it available for me. And of course, Professor Srinivas has received many awards and honors like Distinguished Alumnus Award from Osmania University, College of Technology, Role Model and Exemplary Leader Award at the BPO Excellence Awards in the year 2013, and many more. Professor Srinivas Pinkley has been modest enough to give only a brief profile. There are many more laurels and achievements in his name. Most importantly, we are happy and honored to have him today to address this open forum session on a very important topic, as I said, how do you go for digital transformation? Okay. With this, I hand over the forum and podium to Professor Srinivas Pinkley. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Padmanabhan. That was very kind of you to say all the nice words. I hope I meet the expectations that you have set. I'd also like to thank Ahmedabad Management Association for calling me back. I did a similar webinar physically, of course, about a year ago. Especially like to thank Nair Saab. I think he's such a visionary and a driving force behind Ahmedabad Management Association. So thank you, Nair Saab. Thank you, Radhika. So the way we'll structure this is that maybe about 35, 40 minutes I will talk. I have some slides. I'll use that. And then I'll open it up for questions. If anybody wants to reach out to me after this, please feel free. That's part of what I do in my role in IIM Udaipur. We have an SME incubation center focusing on the digital transformation. So if any of you would like to reach out, please feel free to do that. So with that, I'll share my screen and we will start off. So Mr. Butt just mentioned that it's no longer a question of, why digital or when digital. It's all a question of, we have to do it now. There's no more time left. So but there's also a lot of confusion on what digital transformation means, because we've done a lot of work on this and we found that different people have different interpretations. So I'll spend a few minutes trying to explain what digital transformation is and what digitization is, because people do get confused between the two. And then get into the specific benefits that companies have seen of digital transformation. You will find that my presentation has a very SME focus, but everything I say is equally applicable to larger companies as well. It's just that I decided to give some examples from both large companies as well as SMEs. In fact, we just concluded a study where we spoke to over 75 SMEs across the country in various fields, from plastic manufacturing to agriculture, to understand where they were on their digital journeys, and I'll share some of those results as well. And then I'll end it by talking about how can you start your journey. So these are the three topics that we'll cover. So before I kind of get into this, for those of you who attended my last session, I always begin with this question saying, who will be the largest manufacturer of electrical switches by 2030, right? And there are some answers. Just I'll leave it here and we'll come back to this at the end of the presentation, right? So the potential answers are Havells, Wipro, Anchor, Legrand, all the big names, and there could be others as well. So we'll just leave the question there. So let me start off by kind of differentiating between digitization and digital transformation, because I think it is important for companies and individuals to understand this difference. So what was happening in the last 20 years, till at least between say 1985 and 2005 or even 2010, a lot of that was called digitization. So digitization is basically where you put in some automation or put in some technology to solve a very specific business issue. And we'll talk about some examples in a moment. So it is more about automation and putting in technology and or putting in a electronic equipment and so on. That is what digitization is. And a lot of the digitization, I think it started in India, at least it started in about 85, and it's still going on. And but that's the first phase of digital transformation. But what we are seeing in the last 5 to 10 years, that is called digital transformation, is slightly different from digitization. So digital transformation, and I'll explain this a little more, that it is not just about implementing something to make a process more efficient or make it better. Digital transformation is actually about changing the way a company works. So this is strategy-led, it incorporates digital technologies, and one of the features of digital transformation that it leads to a very connected kind of an environment. So let's use one. Actually, let me use two examples, and I'll run both of them in parallel. One from our personal lives, and one for those of you who are from manufacturing industry, you'll relate to this. So let's go back 25, 30 years ago, right? All of us had wristwatches, which were to see the time. This was fairly mechanical. We had to wind this to make it work. It was okay, but there were a lot of inefficiencies with it. If you forget to wind it, the watch will stop working. It's mechanical parts, which means that eventually it will get spoiled. So there were a lot of flaws with the way we would look at time, right? And now kind of move to the factory 30 years ago, I'm sure many of you, at least those from my generation, would recognize the old lathe machines that we used to have in the factory, where it was all manual. I mean, we had to actually put the piece that we were working on within those jaws, tighten it manually, and then cut it. And so it was a very manual kind of a process, and it was very laborious and took a lot of time. So this was, let's say, pre 1985. I'm just using that. It could be a few years this way or that way. Then the whole digitization came in, which is the first wave, where again, if you look at it, basically the watch, we moved on to what I call electronic watches those days. Casio was a big player. It moved away from being mechanical to being electronic. So you put a battery and it worked. These watches didn't have any mechanical components, so there was no heating or anything like that. They were very, very accurate. They would work for years. In fact, I still have a watch which I bought 30 years ago. It still works absolutely fine every time I change the battery. So it took a very inefficient process of a mechanical watch and made it into some kind of a digital watch. And right, and when it became digital, there were a number of other features that got added to it. So time, date, some of these watches had calculators, they had stopwatches. So a bunch of other functions came in as a result of the digitization, which is the first piece that we're talking here. Similarly, if you look at how the lathe machine evolved, it moved away from this very manual kind of machine to machines that were run through motors. So basically, it increased the speed, it increased the efficiency of the cutting process. So a lot of improvements, and the output and throughput was far higher from the traditional lathe machines, which were there for hundreds of years. So as you can see, this is what we call digitization, where you took a process that was inefficient, which was mechanical, and put some electronics in it and made it mechanical. Now let's come to the current day of digital transformation, and let's see how both of these have transformed, right? So if you look at the watch today, a lot of us wear smart watches. These have GPS, these have IoT devices, these can measure our blood pressure, this can measure our oxygen limits, this can play music. These are connected devices. They obviously they measure things like fitness, steps and running and all of that. All of this is loaded into the cloud. So basically what has happened is that there's a lot of digital technologies that have been incorporated, and it's a connected device. So it's no longer a standalone. So when I bought my watch 25, 30 years ago, it was a good watch, but it was standalone. It couldn't talk to anything else. But today's watch, which all of us use, is basically connected. And there are a lot more things that we can do with the watch. Similarly, if you look at how the lathe evolved, it moved away from being just a motorized kind of a lathe to a more computer-based lathe where you could program what you wanted. Robotic arms would do the cutting. So as you can see, and these arms were again connected, so you could actually program from one terminal. You could program multiple robots across multiple factories around the world. This led to standardization. So again, if you go back, if you see, it is incorporated digital technologies and these are connected devices. So basically, this is the continuum between from where we started, which was purely mechanical, to digitization, to digital transformation. Now, it's important to understand the difference between these two, because as we met companies, we realized that a lot of companies thought that they had already completed digital transformation by moving from this stage to this stage. But the point we wanted to make is that there is still a whole a phase of digital transformation that is still required. I mean, it has happened in our personal lives. The watch is just one example, but if you just look around the way we interact with our bank or anything like that, this has transformed. But what is still lagging behind is the way our work is transforming. So we've kind of done the digitization route, but there is still a lot left from the digital transformation piece. So hopefully with that, there's some clarity on the difference between the two. So based on all the research work that we have done over the years, we have come up with something called a digital transformation model, and it's fairly straightforward. So anything starts with the customer and ends with the customer, right? A lot of you are businessmen, you run companies, you manage companies. Everything starts, whether it's a B2C company or a business to business company, it starts and ends with customers. So that's the two extremes. But what constitutes the digital transformation model is that there are 4 different elements to it, actually 5 elements. So the first is process innovation, which is, if you go back to our lathe example, it is about the process was inefficient. And then we did something innovation to it, and now we're using robotics. So That is process innovation. The second is product innovation, which is if you remember the watch example, the product itself is very new. The end product itself is very new. So there's a product innovation element. And then there is something called a business model innovation. Business model innovation is very straightforward. It is how a company makes money, right? That's all it is. So for example, if you look at all of us who use Uber, right? Earlier, the way we kind of we had to call somebody, a taxi would come. It was a very laborious process, but now it's very straightforward. You just use an app and you call a taxi and you kind of move on. So the way you pay a taxi has changed. You use mobile apps and so on. So there's business model innovation. And then finally, there is organizational innovation, because none of this is going to happen unless a company itself innovates. And this is a combination of both leaders as well as the employees in the company. And what enables all of this are various digital technologies. So this is kind of the overall digital transformation model. Now, it doesn't mean that all these 5 things have to happen for every digital transformation. Some of it, a digital transformation could be a combination of process, business model, digital technology, or product, business model, or operational innovation. So the combinations the degree of change will vary, but essentially these elements will be there in any kind of a digital transformation. So we spoke about digital technologies here, right? So let me just quickly take you through what are some of the digital technologies, and I just try to create a list. This is not a exclusive list. So if you look at it broadly, there are some technologies that are customer facing. These we are very familiar with. So it could be sales platforms, it could be social media platforms, CRMs, customer self-service portal. So all of these are customer facing digital technologies. Then at an operating level, this could be robotics, this could be supply chain automation, financial systems, e-commerce platforms, business intelligence, the way we pay a company. So all of these are typically operational elements. Then from an employee perspective, this could be how we are using social media to attract employees, the collaboration tools, employee portals, training, for example, right? If you were to look back 10 years ago, this was a big issue for most companies on how to keep their employees training. Now it's so easy. I mean, just organize a Zoom call, get somebody like me onto the call, and you can train your employees. So digital has actually helped in terms of employee learning. And then finally, at the base level, there are all the infrastructural services like cloud and IoT and devices and cybersecurity. So these are broadly the kinds of digital technologies that make up the model that we spoke about. Moving on, as we looked at companies around India, we kind of categorized companies into various buckets. So the first is digital unaware. That means these were companies who did not know what digital strategy was. Maybe they had transformed in their lives, so they were using mobile banks and things like that, but they hadn't kind of moved that into their corporate environment. Then the next layer is digital aware. That means they were aware of digital, and there was some understanding of technologies, like some people had used Amazon to do an e-commerce or the IoT. So there was some understanding of digital technologies. Then there were companies who had implemented some solutions. So they were not end-to-end digital, but they had started their transformation journey, but they did not have a digital strategy. So there was a problem, and they went and sorted it out rather than trying to look at it from a holistic perspective. Then there are companies that were digital proficient, who had a proper roadmap saying over the next 5 years, these are the 10 things that we will do to make our company transform digitally. So this is the next layer. And finally, there were digital experts who were companies who were completely digital. And so as a company, it's important. One of the first things you really need to do is see where you are on this journey, because unless you know where you are, you don't know where to go to. So it's important to kind of look back and look at your company. And again, this is a 1-hour session, but if I actually when I do a class, I do almost 2 hours just on this one slide, which is how do you actually assess your digital maturity. So there are various digital maturity models and so on. And this is the starting point for any digital journey. Once you've figured this out, okay, the other thing that when we looked at companies, as part of my research, when I looked at companies across India, what I found is that a lot of IT companies are in the digital expert stage. So obviously these are our technology companies. So by nature, they are in the expert stage. If you were to look at this group here, uh, so a lot of banks, obviously, almost all the large banks now have mobile apps, and there's lots of things that you can do. Hospitality was one of the first industries that has moved into digital. So we use all this Make My Trip app, and we use the Indigo Airlines app. So a lot of this has moved to digital. Then media, obviously, especially in the COVID days, all of us are consuming media online, whether it's Netflix or Hotstar or any of these. So media has already moved to online. And then there is retail, which is another one that has moved to online, and transport and logistics. In the next bucket, we found companies in the SME space, agricultural space, process manufacturing. So a lot of these companies were in the digital starter, digital aware space. It looks like somebody is using the pen. Please stop doing that. It's a little distracting. Okay. Now, so now that we have kind of covered what digital is and what digital transformation is, and where are companies in India generally across the spectrum, I'd just like to give you one example to get you thinking of how digital is enabling what I call light companies, right? And this is just an example. It's not a reflection of anything being good or bad, but all of us have heard of this company called Lakme. It's been there for hundreds of years. It's a cosmetic company. I think they're about 14,000 crores in revenue. They're obviously India's largest cosmetic company, but even one of the global largest cosmetic company. They have about 500 employees full time, and then they have a whole lot of contract staffs, right? So 14,000 crores, about 500 employees, and that's been the traditional model of most companies where it's fully integrated. There's control on everything that's going on. Now let's compare that with another cosmetic company which is very, very new. This is a company called Fenty. So this is actually owned by a music star by name Rihanna. So some of you would have heard of Rihanna. She owns this company called Fenty, right? So Fenty is, so Lakme, by the way, must be whatever, I don't remember what, but it must be 80, 100 years old. Fenty is a 2-3-year-old company. Lakme is 14,000 crores, 500 employees. Fenty is about maybe about 5,000 crores, so about a third of what Lakme's size is in a short period of time, in 2 years. And in a live environment, I actually asked people to guess how many employees Fenty has. If a 15,000 crore company has 500 employees, then a 5,000 crore company, a simple mathematics should say 150, 200 employees. And that's the usual answers that I get. But the reality is that Fenty has only 20 employees, right? So this is one of the biggest things that digital is changing the way companies are. And let's just look at it why, right? I'm just using this as an example. So Fenty is now owned by a European cosmetic manufacturer, right? They use an American R&D lab. So where all the cosmetics are developed is in a lab that's in the US. They manufacture the actual cosmetics in Korea through a Korean contract production company. All the logistics are managed by a Chinese company. Globally, they use a global marketing agency to market their products globally. They have multiple brand ambassadors, including a Brazilian brand ambassador, and obviously Rihanna herself, she's Jamaican, US, American, whatever. So, and then they're available on all the global e-commerce portals, right? And basically what digital has done is that it has enabled these kind of light companies where you can bring in the best in breed of various capabilities and all put them together through digital communication, collaborative tools, and things like that. So this is a startling difference that digital transformation has made, and especially for newer companies. Now, what that also means is that older companies need to change. You cannot have a company that is a third of your revenue, but less than 10 or 15 employees as against your 500 employees. So companies really need to kind of incorporate digital into what they are doing so that they can compete with these newer or born digital companies. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to cover is the impact of COVID on digital. Obviously, all of us know that digital is accelerated. COVID has accelerated digital, and we found a lot of examples in my research as I was talking to companies across the country. I'll just give you a few examples just to give you a sense of, a lot of times, especially small and medium enterprises have this sense saying, no, this is too complicated. This is not what I want to do. I can't afford it. But interestingly, we found a lot of examples of, I was frankly, by the end of this study, and these are all, we almost did 2-hour calls with each of these owners. So they were fairly detailed. Obviously, because of COVID, these are all done on Zoom. But we were quite startled by and surprised actually by the effort that some companies have put into their digital transformation. So the first example is of a bulk shirt manufacturer. This is a company in Bangalore with operations in Tirupur. And earlier, what would happen is that everybody would come to his central office to look at the fabric and things like that. And then he realized that because of COVID, this can't happen. So he's actually used technologies such as augmented reality and virtual reality, which one sees in video games, to make it still doesn't replace the experience of somebody touching and feeling the textile, but he has incorporated technologies like this to ensure that his customers are still connected with him. And I'll just talk through a few other examples. So plywood manufacturer, right? So again, not somebody you will expect to go down the digital path, but because of COVID, he had no choice. So he started interacting with his customers, and his customers were basically construction companies, and these are companies who make furniture and so on. And he started interacting with them on Zoom, and he was showing them samples on Zoom. So again, and then I asked all these guys saying that after, once hopefully COVID gets sorted out and we're out of this, will you go back to your normal, to the way you used to manage business? And the answer I consistently got is saying, no, we are not going to go back to the way we did business. COVID, yes, it was caused a lot of pain, and a lot of us are in serious trouble financially and all of that, but it also forced us to change the way we are looking at business. So, and we found many such examples. So this was an SME packaging company, in fact, based in Gujarat, and they have this field sales people who go and talk to customers all over Gujarat, the end users, which are all the FMCG companies. And earlier, he had no control of his salespeople because they used to be all over the field, from Bharuch to Baroda to Anand to this, and he really didn't know what was going on. And what happened is that because of the whole COVID, a lot of his sales folks dropped out. They didn't want to go and meet customers, but so he was left with a very small number of salespeople. So he said, okay, let me invest in Internet of Things technologies where I can track everything that these salespeople are doing and make their processes more efficient. And I have hundreds of such examples that these companies have done. And the point I'd like to make is that, again, to take off what Mr. Buch said, that it's no longer, do I need to do it? Everybody is doing it. I mean, even in these have been difficult times for all companies, especially small and medium enterprises. But we have found again and again, examples of companies who have really stretched themselves to do something very unique and implement digital. So one of the other interesting things is, so what happens if you implement digital? I mean, does it actually make an impact? Yes, because of COVID, you had to do it and all of that is fine, but does it actually impact digital? So what I'll show you is a survey result, and this is not just India. This was across SMEs across Asia. So it's a little complicated, but I'll try and explain it. So basically, you see 3 bars here, which means this dark green means that the company was not growing. This means that there was some growth, and this meant that there was substantial growth. And basically this was mapped against how much of digital transformation these companies have done. And very clearly, companies where digital, obviously growth also depends on which industry and things like that. So to take care of that, comparisons were done within these groups. So if you look at companies who have actually undergone digital transformation, a much larger proportion of them are showing high growth compared to, say, flat or declining growth. And you will find that trend consistent. So if you see, even in say companies who are not fully there but a little mature, almost the first two buckets. So there are a lot of these companies, over 70% of these companies were seeing moderate growth and high growth. And this was numbers reported by the owners and the managers of the company. So it's real data in that sense. So very clearly, digital is not a fad. It's not something you have to do because everybody else is doing it. But companies who have done it are actually seeing the results of it. Obviously, there are operational efficiencies of digital transformation, but there's also revenue growth that is coming out of a digital transformation. I'll give you this a very interesting example. I was talking to one of the largest movers and packers in India, and they do both commercial moving as well as residential moving. So I was asking them, saying, so how has, I mean, obviously COVID impacted them because people were not moving. There was that much of less freight and things like that. I said, and then they started having Zoom calls with all their customers. And I was asking this in the context of his residential business. And I said, so how is, getting into Zoom and things like that helping you? And he said, it actually grew my business substantially. And I said, how? In a scenario, in a COVID scenario, how has your business actually grown? He said two things. One is, earlier, I am one owner and I sit in, I think he sits in Bangalore, if I'm not mistaken. He said, I sit in Bangalore and I have operations all over the country. And very few of my customers actually meet me. But now, because of Zoom, I just we start a Zoom call. I am able to talk to every customer, almost every customer, at least for 4 or 5 minutes initially. And he says that made a big difference in closing the deal, because the moment the customer says the CEO of the company is getting onto a call to me, whether it was a live call or a recorded call or whatever it was, their confidence in that was going up. That was one. Second is all of us have moved at some point, right? People are sent to home and then they evaluate all the saman that needs to be moved, and then when quotation comes, and it's a long drawn process. So what this company did is that through use of smart digital technologies, they created a phone app. All the person had to, a person who wanted their service would have to go and take pictures of all their furniture. It would all get uploaded, a quote would get generated, and within a few hours of this, the customer had a quote. So what he was telling me is that, one, because of the touch, that he is able to now talk to all his customers personally, he and his son. Second is because the speed at which he is able to turn around a quote, his business has actually grown. So this is an interesting example of a company who during COVID used digital technologies to kind of grow their business. And that's really what this last bar shows. Okay. So obviously all of this is great, but how do you start your journey? And I'll keep this at very high level because you can't do this in 40 minutes. Now, what I found is that I think there are first, I looked at all the motivators for companies to going down the digital path. So growth was clearly there. Second is competition, that somebody else has done it, and if we don't do it, we'll be behind. That's a big fear. And especially the older companies are seeing that. We just spoke about the Lakme example, right? I mean, a new company has come and hit 1/3 of their revenue in 2 years' time. So if Lakme doesn't go down the digital transformation path, they will struggle against the new competition. So competition is another driver. The third is internationalization. So traditionally, companies have felt that, I don't have the capabilities to go to another country. And I was talking to this, I don't want to mention the name of the company, but it's a large snack food company that's based around Baroda. And I was talking to them, and he said that because of digital now, he's able to. Earlier, he used to sell. He used to do a little bit of exports to the US, and it used to get sold in Patel Brothers, which is one of the largest Indian grocery store chain in the US. But now he has got an e-commerce portal. He's able to do a lot more things. He's developed an app. He's doing a lot more things, and he's saying because of this, his international markets have also grown. So this is on the growth side. On the customer side, sorry, on the operation side, I think there are 3 or 4 things that are driving, that are key motivators for digital transformation. One is obviously customer pressures and cost and quality. And again, a lot of you may be facing this. So I was talking to this a person who is a large ancillary manufacturer for a global automobile company, again outside Ahmedabad. And what he was telling me is that every year he gets the price is automatically reset based on inflation. Now the problem with that, and I'm sure a lot of you experience it, the problem with that is that the inflation is applicable only on the raw materials, not on people cost and all the other costs that are there. So he says, I have no choice. He says, if I have to survive, then the only way I can do it is through automation and digital transformation and so on. So while one set of it is growth and competition, the other set of it is operational efficiencies. Obviously, labor availability is a big issue, especially hopefully some of that has been sorted out now, but in the early days of COVID, this was a big challenge because a lot of companies use migrant laborers, and labor went back home. So who will actually do this? Also, the other advantage of this is that I was talking to this textile manufacturer in Delhi, and I asked him saying, why did you set up such a high cost operation in such a operation in such a high cost area, which is NCR? And he said, 20 years ago when I said this, I could not. There was no infrastructure available in the state of Jharkhand. Those days, I guess it was Bihar. So I had to set it up here, and I brought all the labor from those states into NCR. But now, because of availability of digital and I'm able to monitor my factories through cameras. There's so many things I can do. I've slowly shifting the factories back to the states from where the employees are. So these are some of the motivators. In terms of where can people educate themselves about digital, obviously webinars like this are useful. You can talk to other competitors. A lot of academic institutes are running programs. So for example, in IIM Udaipur, we have a incubation center, and people, some of the faculty like me, we do a lot of these education seminars, and we are also helping some SMEs directly. They register in our incubation center, and we're helping them develop their digital journeys. Then, of course, there are a lot of consultants and vendors who are there. What I find is that there are a lot of senior people who worked in large companies who are now retired, who want to do something. They're available for other companies to consult with, and conferences and exhibitions, which all of you go to. And then finally, in terms of capabilities, and I think this is where a lot of companies make a mistake, is that they look at one small issue and saying, okay, let me try and solve this issue. But unfortunately, a digital transformation doesn't work like that. So you really need to understand what you want to do, what your goal is 3 to 4 years or 5 years from now. Develop a roadmap. Now, you don't need to implement the entire roadmap on one shot because it is too expensive. You'll not have the resources. So you may have to do it in stages, but it is important to have that roadmap. And let me give you this example. I spoke about this packaging company, right? So they had a lot of challenges because their customers were all multinationals, and they were forcing them to go down the digital transformation path. So he said, chalo ERP laga dete hain. And then he went and he spent 40 lakhs and he implemented an ERP and did that. And then found that ERP just does some accounting, and it's like a system of record. He could see where the finished goods are and things like that. It gave him some basic capability. Yes, it was a big difference to the manual process that he was doing. But then he realized that unless he implements things like Internet of Things, so for example, when his machine breaks down, he wanted to implement IoT-based tracking of these devices so that people know that in advance that these devices are breaking down and things like that. And then when he started talking to the IoT vendors, he realized that his ERP and his IoT will not talk to each other, right? So, and therefore, what do? You can't throw an investment that you made for 40 lakhs. But you need the IoT implementation as well. So these are some of the challenges that will happen if you don't have a roadmap. So one of the things I prescribe is that do have a roadmap. You don't need to implement all of it, but do have a roadmap, and then bring in digital consultants and technology vendors and so on. And there are a lot of schemes from the government as well to fund some of these. Now, obviously, funding of digital transformation is one of the biggest challenges that companies have. Whether it's large or small, the issue is the same. So one way a lot of companies do this is that they start off their digital transformation journeys, especially in the business to business space, manufacturing space, by reducing costs. So the cost savings that they get through this is what they invest back into the digital transformation. So this is one thing that we find quite often is a technique that companies use to generate the financing for their digital transformation. Okay, I'll quickly. We have about. Maybe I'll talk for another 5 minutes and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So this is a friend of mine. He manufactures. Right, I asked you a question right up front saying who will be the largest LED switch the switch manufacturer 30 years from now. So this is a friend of mine. He makes LED switches. Is about 10 crores of revenue. Is fairly well established in 3 states. Very happy with the way he is. But he was keen to develop a digital strategy. So I went and spent some time with him, and in his mind, it was always, how do I compete against a Wipro and a Havel and the organized market? And then how do I compete against the unorganized market, the Chinese imports? And those are kinds of things that were there in his mind. And every time I met him, he said the same thing. And I said, listen, let's sit down. Are you even talking about the right competition, right? So remember the model that I showed earlier. So I said, okay, let's kind of put this model out and let's go through it with you. So basically, I said, okay, so this is the model that I already showed you. And I said, okay, Vivek, now let's look at this and apply it to your scenario. Who are your customers into the future? So we did some techniques like persona identification and all, and found that these are all millennials. These are young people, 30 years, 20 to 30 years in age, the buyers. They were mobile, they were tech savvy. And when we spoke to some of these customers, they said, the biggest problem with the light switch today is that it's fixed to a wall, and I don't want that. I'm controlling so many things with my mobile phone. Why do I have to go and turn on a switch every time I have to walk to the nearby switchboard and do all of those things? So that's where he started saying, oh, maybe there is something more to it, right? So what we realized is that the product that he needs to develop, the product innovation, has to be disconnected from the wall and maybe controlled by mobile apps, because now everything is controlled by mobile apps. Then to do this, earlier he used to have a lot of people who were good in assembling things, because that's what switches are or electric components are. But then he realized that now if he's going to create a mobile app and he's going to create something different, then he needs programming skills and he needs to relook at his channel partners. It's no longer the wholesalers and distributors and so on. And then in terms of his team itself, it's not mechanical and electric anymore. It needs to be electronics and computer science and so on. So his organization had to change. And then he was saying, okay, if all of this is changing, then maybe I can look at other ways of making money. It's not just about selling a switch, because if I sell a switch, that's a one-time revenue and that's the end of it. I never get to know what happens after that. I don't have anything. So we said, okay, can we build in some analytics into this? I mean, can a switch automatically detect the temperature and then decide on, what fan speed should be there? So we kind of started brainstorming what he can do on his business model. So as you can see, this is a friend I've known for at least 45 years, or 40 years. I gave away my age, but yeah. Every time we met, his only question was, how am I going to deal with a Havels or a Wipro or an Anchor or the Chinese imports? And basically, by the end of this exercise, I proved to him that those are not the people he should be looking at. He should be looking at Amazon Alexa and Google Home and mobile phones as his competition. And his entire business model has to be transformed if you were to kind of look at this into the next 10 years. So hopefully that kind of gave you a sense of how this model can be used and how you can think through your own company and your own industry and saying, who are my customers into the next 10 years? What do they need? How are they going to be different? And how will I service this? So this kind of gives you an outline of that. So in conclusion, it's no longer a question of why. It's a question of how fast can you do it and when can you do it. Clearly, based on all the research that I'm seeing, and I'm sure some of you have experienced it, the benefits are very understandable, and clients are demanding it. Client no longer wants to deal with somebody who's still, very paper-based and things like that. But it requires a plan, and I think this is the biggest problem that I find with companies is that the leadership is not bought into it. They think of this as saying, "Okay, this is one more fad that is coming, and I'll do it." So that's one. And second is, as I gave you the example of ERP and IoT, right? I mean, you need to have a plan. Unless that plan is there, you'll end up with a lot of missteps. Also, the competition will come from unexpected quarters. I mean, when my friend Vivek, till I had that meeting with him and sat down, he never considered that he was still looking at his traditional competitors, saying, these are the people I need to, the cheap imports and things like that. That was all he keeps talking about. And today, when I talk to him, he doesn't talk about that at all. He says, "What's up, Purana hai, that's all gone. Now I need to figure out how I'll be part of a Google Home Hub, or how do I connect my switches, whatever the electronic switches, to Alexa, and Google Home." And he's talking a very different language from what he was, say, 2 years ago. And digital transformation, unfortunately, is not a one-time process. It is continuous, because digital technologies themselves are evolving. So if you really need to keep pace with this, then you also need to evolve. And that's the unfortunate reality. Maybe for 25 years. So if you look at the way industries progressed, I think for almost 100 years, companies didn't have to do much. Which was the whole mechanical era. Then there was the whole the electronic era, which lasted about 30 years, where there was again not much to be done once you went that path. But unfortunately, we are in the early stages of digital transformation, and it's changing almost every day. Frankly, by the time I make this presentation, something new would have come. So it is a continuous process, and you need to keep updated with the process. But start simple. Don't try and do everything at one shot, because it's a very risky process. You're fundamentally changing the way your organization works, and therefore you need to start with something simple, make sure it works, and then build from there. And remember, I try to differentiate between digitization and digitalization, and digital transformation. So some companies have already completed the digitization stage, so they've already moved out of into the mechanical era. But if you haven't done that, that's itself a good starting point, because unless you do that, you cannot go digital. So you cannot completely transform. So that's broadly what I had to say. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you very much, sir. The presentation was ended very, very insightful. And there are some questions popping up. I'll request others also to mention your questions in the chat box. So the first question is, sir, what are the shortcomings of digital transformation, and how those shortcomings can be managed?
Yeah, so thanks. I think that's a great question, right? And typically, I usually end the session with that. Now, so there are 2 or 3 problems with what I see with digital transformation. One is that I don't think people really understand it properly, and there is a lot of, for lack of a better word, fad-based chasing of it. Ki abhi blockchain aa gaya, so let me go and implement blockchain. But do you really need blockchain? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? Can the problem be solved without using something blockchain? Can there be something else that you use? So the first is not to rush into something just because it's new, right? I mean, we all do that in our personal lives, right? New mobile phone, let's go buy it. Apple 13, 14, 15, 16. Why? I mean, what is the additional value that it's giving to us? Now, personal lives is still fine, but in corporate life, that's a big issue, because you can't keep changing things like that. So one, don't get caught on what is called the hype cycle. You have to be cautious on that. The second is the whole roadmap thing that I spoke about, right? Unless you have a roadmap, you will find yourself in trouble sooner than later. And that's what we have seen across multiple companies in India. So it's important to have the roadmap. The third is that, unfortunately, there is no right answer on digital transformation yet. No, it's not that there's a path which somebody has gone down and you say you do these 4 steps and you'll get there. It is still a relatively new thing, and it's evolving also. So and unfortunately, there's no answer to that, because you have to take a little bit of a risk, saying, okay, if I do this, it'll work. So one thing I do, that's the reason why I say start small. So for example, if you have 5 units, don't try and change all 5 in one day. Pick 1 unit, experiment there, get your solution right before you scale it to the other unit. So those are some things in terms of the challenges with digital.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is that how India's digital transformation improved it against other developed or developing countries?
Yeah. So I think we were behind till about 6 months ago. So obviously the developed countries, they have a lot of resources and they've kind of gone ahead. India is catching up. But interestingly, what I actually stopped looking at it by country. I started looking at it by industry, right? Because let's take the travel industry, right? I'm just using that as an example. Whether it's India or US, everybody is now on mobile apps and all of that is there. So the travel industry is completely transformed. But if you go to the other side, which is manufacturing, maybe say countries like Germany and Sweden, to some extent US have gone ahead because they have more resources and they have a lot more access to funds. But I think because of COVID, we are also accelerating quite fast. So I think the change is happening and we'll catch up. Compared to countries in emerging markets, again, it's very industry specific. So in some areas, for example, Kenya is ahead of us or South Africa is ahead of us. But in other areas, we are ahead of them. Similarly, in some areas, Vietnam is like, say, if you take the financial services, fintech kind of thing, Vietnam is ahead of us in a lot of ways. But when it comes to manufacturing, they may be behind us. So I think the differences today are more industry rather than country. But it's not that we have a long way. We can catch up. And end of the day, we have the smartest brains for digital technology in the world. So almost all the digital technologies in the world are actually being created in Hyderabad and Bangalore and Ahmedabad and Gurgaon. So, so we have that inherent advantage, right? And I think, again, I'm going out of my scope here, but and I don't really fully understand, but I think even when it comes to the COVID vaccine, I think we've proven to the world that because of how agile we are, we can actually, I mean, we can actually come up with world-class products faster than the rest of the world. And again, I haven't gone and studied either Zydus or Bharat Biotech or Serum India, but from everything I'm reading, they have incorporated a lot of digital technologies in the way they've kind of hastened the development of the vaccine. And that's the reason why we are ahead of the world today. Yeah, obviously we had vaccine manufacturing facilities and that helped, but I think even in terms of R&D, we have shown to the world in the last 6 months that we can be ahead of them, and I think a lot of that is, in addition to the human capital, the kind of digital technologies that these companies have adopted.
Yeah, so participants, due to paucity of time, we cannot take all the questions. So I'm just reading out the last question now. So that is, many a times prospects are doubtful of the benefits and find digital transformation expensive. So what are some strategies for convincing such apprehensive prospects about digital transformation, sir?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think this is obviously somebody who's working for a consulting company or a vendor who's asking that. I've written an article on this, and I think it got published in Fortune India, Forbes India, or Fortune India, one of the two. You should actually read it. And this is exactly what I'm talking about in terms of, there is a lot of skepticism about this, because especially for smaller companies saying, will this work? Will this actually cause a lot of issues? So it's a very complex thing. I don't think we'll be able to answer in a few minutes. But I think there are 4 or 5 things that a vendor can do. One is, are you targeting the right person in the company? And in India, especially, we have a lot of family-run businesses. And what we have generally found is that the newer generation leaders are more forthcoming in taking some of these risks. So that's one. We also found that, if you look at how a company is financed, whether it's debt funded or equity funded, that makes a difference in the way they look at digital. The third is that, especially if you're targeting industries like manufacturing and all of that, I think it's important to show the operational efficiencies first. So what we found in our study is that if you when you're talking to manufacturing kind of companies, talk operational efficiencies before you talk to growth, because that's the first thing they want to see. If they see that, then they'll go down the other path. However, if you're looking at a business to consumer company like the snack food company, or let's say this mover and freight forwarder that I was talking to you about, who are more consumer focused, they are more interested in listening about how you can grow their business. Now, eventually, everybody wants to grow their business, but again, what we found in the study that we did is that manufacturing companies first want to hear about operations, because they believe that if they get their operations right, then the growth will come in any case. However, business to consumer companies want to hear the story of how you can help them grow. So there are a number of these nuances that are there, and it's not easy. I mean, it's not easy because there is a lot of skepticism. In fact, you should share this presentation saying what happens if you don't do it. I mean, will you even survive? Will you even exist 5 years from now if you don't do it? But let me also tell you the reverse side of what is happening, right? Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who go and claim expertise on this subject, and they're going and giving wrong advice. And we found a lot of these. So in IIM Udaipur, for example, we are hopefully soon will be launching a train the trainer program where we are telling all these consultants saying, please come and do the certification with us. We'll at least cover some basics in terms of digital maturity model and things like that, so that when you go and recommend something to a customer, you're doing it with a proper plan. Because that's the other side. Because as a vendor, if you go and do something which is more short term and not long term, then not only that company's respect you've lost, but then that especially in India, everybody talks to everybody. It takes 5 minutes for that reputation to spread. So that's the other flip side of it, where people have gone and sold things aggressively without really telling the end user what the long-term implications of that. Again, it goes back to the digital roadmap that I spoke about.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
We have
Thank you for giving a very nice, insightful talk. And you have given a lot of examples. And I'm sure that our participants would have taken it in the right sense. And we would also like to get your books in our bookshops, some books, so that participant can buy it. Kindly tell your distributor to supply it, sir. He'll buy it.
Sure, Mr. Nair. So there are two books. One is the SME book, which I last time I given you.
Yeah, we have released also here.
There's another book on digital transformation that is coming out 3 months from now. So we'll make sure
okay. Whenever it comes, we will have an actual program here.
Hopefully,
we'll have a campus program.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
In addition to meeting you, I also get to get fantastic food when I'm.
Thank you. Thank you all the participants. Thank you all the participants for taking interest in this program, and we look forward to attending the future programs also. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.